pleasure to be joining you, and thank you for asking us to co-host. Yes, maybe I should give you a quick overview about how and why SPRIND has sort of waded into the arena of university-based, or let's say research institution-based IP transfer. So the story is, oh, and I should mention that I'm also joined here by three of my great colleagues who are kind of the U-boats here. But, you know, if I can't answer the question, probably one of them can. So so feel also free to jump in. Yeah, so how did we get involved in this? So yes, we are the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation. And of course, you know, we're very for most of our projects, I would say for 99.9% of our projects, we're very deeply wedded into the deep tech space, right? And where does most of the deep tech get developed? Of course, it's in research institutions and universities. So if we want to get that great research and get it onto the route to translation in order for it to become, you know, really breakthrough products and services in the future, we have to get it out. And this is essentially what the situation was at the beginning of last year, that we had a handful of negotiations ongoing with a few universities and research institutions in Germany. And they turned out to be somewhat complex and difficult. And so we said, oh, okay, so there's obviously an issue here, and maybe we should address that. And we did by assembling a working group. And actually, I'm also glad that we had the support of First Momentum here, because Sebastian Böhmer, one of the founding partners, was member of that working group. We assembled a working group in March, and then published a position paper in April, which was, I would say, written in a deliberately provocative way in order to actually create a little bit of momentum around that. We were actually surprised by how much momentum, what kind of storm we reaped when this position paper was published. It was also helped a lot with it being publicized as well by the then current state secretary in the Ministry for Research and Education. So he was a big supporter of that. So it went all on social media, and yes, so we sowed some wind and reaped some storm, and the reactions were either 0 or 1. There wasn't 0.1, sorry, 0.5 in the middle. It was either saying yes, of course, or it was basically bedeviling the whole suggestions that we made in that. And we were a bit surprised and said, like, okay, now we actually have to do something about this. And what we did was then we basically assembled. We said, okay, let's do a pilot. Let's assemble a group of, let's say, 15 to 20 universities and research institutions who really want to rethink IP transfer in order to make it faster, in order to make it more standardized, in order to make it more equitable to all the parties involved, in order to be focused on the actual growth of the companies that are spun out from university, and also to take, of course, the viewpoints of investors who may invest in those companies and who are a crucial link in obviously the growth trajectory of many of these companies going forward. So we did that, and we have this working group now working on what we called this initiative the Swiss pocket knife for intellectual property rights management and transfer. We're not there yet, so please don't expect some sort of silver bullet or kind of magic thing jumping out, but we're working on that, and it is really our firm belief that things can be standardized, things can be made easier, and things can be made faster. And we're, of course, assembling sort of coalitions on all levels, be it political, be it within the university space, be it within the investment space, and of course, being in the founding team space, because they are, of course, the people who are really in need of the most support in this very crucial negotiations that will determine, how successful they're going to be with their spin-off in the future. So yeah, I would like to leave it at that, to say watch this space. So we are working on that, and we would love to hear from all of you who have maybe great suggestions about how things can be made easier, how things can be made faster. So please feel free to contact me if that not only of course if you are in a difficult negotiation situation at the moment with your university or research institution. Of course, we will try to help as best as we can. But also if you have really good suggestions about how things can be made easier and faster and more standardized, and more oriented towards the growth of the companies that come out of deep tech. Thank you very much, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Are there any pressing, urgent questions to Barbara on this topic? We can allow 2 now, and then you can park them on Menti for after the discussion with the panelists. We can do this with show of hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Barbara, again for that rundown. That was incredibly informative, and I hope very kind of motivating for people to hear that there is somebody watching their back. So with that, we can jump onto the chat with our panelists. I'll start with Patrick, since this was all like very fresh for you. So let's kick off with your experience and strategy. So you started negotiating with the Institute. What type of IP you were after, and what was then your strategy for effectively negotiating the IP transfer agreement?
Yeah, okay. Hello to everyone in this group. It's very nice to be able to talk to you and to tell you a bit about my experience. So first of all was really the thing, like, what do we actually want from the host facility that hosted us for so many years, and we developed a few things together, and finally you get to the point where you have some IP, some intellectual property, and in our case, it were like a few patents, and we thought, okay, can we commercialize them? And this was then part of the negotiation. We wanted to get the IP out, which was patents and the know-how and the freedom to use the already generated know-how, and so that they would not say, like, after a month or a year or 10 years, hey, wait a minute, this data is actually something that we produced and not you. But it was us, but during the period of the research, let's say. So we negotiated also the know-how into the negotiation process, and now finally have a little paper that says that we get the intellectual property, meaning patents, also the know-how, and we also wanted to have lab facility, some equipment, and so on. But this was in the end then something that we said it is a nice to have thing. And when it comes to the price, let's say, is it really worth it? Do you really need it? Do you maybe find some cheaper labs, some cheaper infrastructure somewhere else? Is it maybe cheaper just to rent a flat somewhere where you can put all people together, rather than staying at the host institution? And so we decided in the end to not have the facility in the negotiation process, but just the intellectual properties. Yeah.
And how did you go about the strategy? Did you have any help in the process, and how long did it all take? Just to kind of
you mentioned it in the beginning. We come from the Austrian Institute of Technology, which is like a research institution. It's not university, it's not industries, it's basically in between. And this institute has since a few years the initiative to push spin-offs. So they actually have they have a scout inside the company who is looking for, let's say, novel ideas that would have the potential to be commercialized. And since we already had the idea, we contacted this person, and he was actually already aware of us. And so we started talking, and this person jumps in, and he takes over the role of someone who is in between the spin-off and the host institution. So he's mostly in the negotiation process on our side, but he understands also the host institution, the C-levels. You know, you need to talk to the CEO, the CFO, maybe the law department, and so on to set up the contract. And it actually facilitates it a lot to speak up with the people, because you're maybe sometimes a bit afraid to take the phone and call the CEO of your host institution, or you do not want to bother them in a way, but you should. And this guy really helped us because he said, yeah, let's talk with him. I arrange a meeting, we talk tomorrow. And so it actually makes everything faster and easier. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Georg, as you spun out software, what was that kind of process for you? What was your strategy back in 2017?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I was a bit too late for the event. Sorry for that. I had the event before that. So, so in our case, it was not only software, it was also some hardware stuff that we developed during our PhDs. And that was the thing that we most cared about, because of course the VC asked for business guarantees to really get those things out of our faculty and our chairs. And the software thing was actually quite easy, because from the beginning on, we started in a business besides university, so as a, so to say, side story of the whole thing, because we were absolutely aware of that the university likes to participate in whatever startup or entrepreneurship thing we are doing afterwards with the intellectual property that we have. So, but we avoided, so to say, in the process, even 2 years before spinning out of the university, to even use resources in our spare time. But we of course, we were very friendly, because it's indeed our alma mater, and we needed to talk to the transfer office at the university. At this time, it was completely understaffed and a mess. So I hope at your university that works a bit better. And I also believe that it's nowadays also better in Dresden, where I'm living. The best consultancy that we got was from the local exists institution that we have here. And they told us, of course, go to the transfer office, but they were very much too slow to even answer our questions and our. So we just took some risk also, of course, and told our VC that we are going to have all the IP in our pockets, and talk to the professors to if they want to have a share of the company. And that was our way out, basically. So we took a bit a pirate way. So for all public institutions, that sounds, of course, a bit like yeah, not the best way, and not the lowest risk taking. But for us, it worked out. And after some months, we overworked what we had as an intellectual property so much that it was unrecognizable from the thing that we had when really leaving the university. So in that way, there was not a real problem, and everything was fine. So that was our way out, basically.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Barbara, as someone who has helped spin-offs get through this process and witnessed, or at least heard a bunch of these cases that went bad or didn't, or went well, what are some common misconceptions or misunderstandings that researchers may have when negotiating IP transfer, and how they can best prepare themselves for these negotiations?
Well, well, first of all, I think maybe sometimes we get a bit of a skewed image, because of course we only hear when things go really spectacularly wrong and belly up. So we don't hear about all the deals that go very, very smoothly, and you know, because that's usually when people turn for help, and when they are trying to sort of course, engage with the wider startup community. Of course, it's I would say the common misconception is that if most, well, let's say deep tech teams is the fact that they actually don't own the IP. So that the IP is actually owned by the research institutions and by the university, and someone, and you know, and in most cases they actually have developed it. So I think that kind of realization that you have to pay for something that actually you have developed and that is owned now by the institution that employs you, I think is somewhat of a, well, is something of a rude awakening. So I don't know, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's certainly where I would say a lot of feathers get flustered at the beginning. But then, of course, you know, it's like any other negotiation. I mean, once you have come to realize that, you say, okay, there's the party at the other end, so I better clue myself up, and actually, you know, try to understand all the ins and outs of the various scenarios that are on the table, and essentially there aren't very many, right? I mean, it's just that you have to kind of, as Patrick mentioned, you have to kind of also ask yourself, like, what are my plans for this company? Like, how far do I want to take it? Do I think that this is something where I, for example, need large amounts of external investment in order to get to market? Or is it something where a product will be developed that in, let's say, 3 to 5 years actually has a reasonable chance of actually already being in the market and generating sales and generating revenue? I mean, I think these are all questions that you have to answer for yourself, as also as a founding team, and saying, like, and not only as yourself as a founder, but probably also with all your co-founders and all the people who are part of that journey. I mean, to really look each other in the eye and say, like, okay, what is it that we actually want to get out of this, right? And I think this is a process. This is not a decision that is to be taken lightly, and I think it's probably causing a lot of sleepless nights in the founding scenario. But I would say, you know, take good time to actually think this through. What is it that you want to get out of this, and how far do you want to take this? Is it something where you see this is, you know, this is you have the vision, ambition, and motivation for this to become a complete game changer that is going to change the world? Or is it maybe something where you are also happy for it to maybe grow organically and be on a, you know, be on a more stable and organic growth path? I mean, all of this is something that you have to figure out with yourself, and obviously with your co-founders on the team. And I think then you can ask the right questions. I mean, of course, there's a lot of terminology that you would have to probably dig through, but there are also a lot of resources online. You know, I mean, there are lots of resources around, you know, what explaining term sheets and explaining all the legalities pertaining to them. So it's just, you have to take some time to kind of learn a new language, I would say. But it can be learned. That's the good thing.
Thank you. Like, this is an awesome list of kind of tips to pay attention to. And I think both Patrick and Georg had some stories that they shared with me of, like, that reflect some of your topics. So for instance, Patrick, you mentioned that one of the main aha moments was realigning, and so feel free to share that story with the.
So, yeah, I think it was really the process of finding what we want, who we are, and where we want to be, exactly as Barbara just said. This was really the moment where we thought, okay, now we have like some invention, we have something, we came up with a new idea in our labs. Let's bring it now to the market, and it's all easy, all cool. But in the end, you have a technology in your hand, and this is just a fraction of what you need to have a product. And this was a realization process that took me more than a year, that you have a technology, but that's not all. Like, there's so much more behind it. Probably some of you already realized there is like really a lot of a lot of things that need to be taken into account to get out from the lab, from the laboratory, from the research you're doing, whatever it is, from the computer, and really find your way and really find out how can you pack this into a product that someone is willing to pay for. And then when you know this, then you go back and then you think, okay, now I know which IP I need. Now I know what know-how I need. And now I know which devices, tools, whatever I need. And then you can create it. But you really should have sort of the pathway in front of you. You should see it rather clear. It took us really long to figure out. But this is a negotiation process within your team, because you think you have a technology. Maybe if you are really lucky, you're just one person and you know everything. But in my opinion, it's better to have some team members. Just one buddy is good, two is better, and you can talk with them. And if you have two people maybe around you, then you think, yeah, we know exactly what our technology is, but you probably never talked about it, what your product will look like, what your product can do. And then maybe you have different phases. First, the product is capable of doing this, and then maybe in 5 years this, and then in 10 years we can do, you know, the best thing in the world. But you must not think of the 10-year business and the 10-year product, because in 10 years you probably ran out of money like immediately. So you should have a good plan how to reach this. And that was for me an aha moment, even way before the negotiation process for the IP.
Well, better late than never. No, just joking. But it's a great point to share. And Georg, from your perspective, if I remember correctly from our chat, you said that it's also like it's not necessary to bring out the IP for everything, because in 2 years you're going to overrun it anyways. Could you elaborate on that for the audience, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's exactly like Patrick said, right? So what I said also before, that the solution that we had at the university became totally unrecognizable after some months. And indeed, technology is, in my opinion, never the problem for, at least for a software startup, right? Because you are iterating over it. And we, in our company history, which is now almost 6 years, we did 2 180-degree pivots, so to say. And that the thing that we had is not that anymore that important for now. So that means whatever you have as an IP in your software might turn out to be not that worth as in later phases. So the most problems are always in the business model and in productizing, so to say, what you have as a technology. Even though when you have, for instance, nowadays talking about an artificial intelligence model, and you say, oh, it can super high quality recognize objects for in our domain, robotic objects or so, or something from workpieces or so. But it's not the problem to recognize the things. After 6 months, the technology already turned over again, and you can use something very much cheaper to do that. And all that you found in the university or but which you research and develop is maybe not anymore the thing that you need now for having a good product that is efficient and can make money for you. And that's what we experience. So just that, and of course, from that reasoning, just take really the things that are absolutely unavoidable to get from the university. All other things are know-how that no one can take from you.
Yeah, and now we are back exactly at the must-have versus nice-to-have and the benefits of each. So I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but we had a third panelist with us, and she was she negotiated a very tough IP transfer process with Zoom here in Munich. So she got engaged elsewhere for this evening, unfortunately, but so I kind of, from my chat with her before, I managed to pin down the 7 key points to kind of prep yourselves for the IP transfer process. So she said, number 1, take the SPRIND white paper and bring it with you to the first meeting. Number 2, talk with other founders about your tech transfer office and learn about the process there. Step 3, Already upfront, ask the TTO to come to the first meeting with suggestions and framework and reasons behind every of these steps. 4, sniff the situation out alone, but bring in someone experienced like an advisor or an investor in on negotiation table. 5, learn what a good deal looks like. This can have a huge impact down the road. 6, do it early. Plan at least 1.5 years so that you don't have to do this under time pressure. So the TTOs are afraid of selling the IP for cheap and making a bad deal. So they will wear you off to make sure that they are thorough. And 7, the more staff the TTO, the more complex the process will be. So this is kind of like a rule of thumb if you need to eyeball this before you go in. Patrick, is there anything you could add to this list?
Very wholesome list, I would say. Maybe, yeah, really be prepared about some numbers. Like sometimes you sit in front of an audience who come from not techies, someone who is not deep tech or whatever, and they just know numbers, and they ask you, but how much will you earn in 5 years? And then you say like, well, I don't know, a lot, maybe not a lot, I don't know yet. So be prepared for questions that come from a completely different setting as you are used to. So you're not in I don't know, in a conference, you're not pitching in front of an audience with other scientists. You talk to lawyers, you talk to CFOs, and they ask different questions. And so maybe be prepared for their mindset.
That's an excellent one. Barbara, anything to chime in here?
Well, I think from the 7 bullet points that you just mentioned, you can probably glimpse that the negotiations were very tough.
Yes.
So it sounds as if you have to arm yourself up to your teeth before you even have the first talk. But I mean, there are also quite a good number of TTOs there who actually, who are reasonable, right? To say that it's and as Patrick said, of course, they are at the moment in this under the pressure, under the political pressure, actually, that universities and research institutions should actually do more in order to encourage spin-off activity from the research base. So so there is a lot of kind of, let's say, fermentation and momentum in the community at the moment. Nonetheless, it is of course something where where you have to talk numbers. And I would, if I would have to add something to the list, it is probably, the first thing they're going to ask you is send me your business plan, right? And in those business plans, and everybody who has ever, been in the entrepreneurial space or talked to founders and knows something about entrepreneurship knows that everything you put in a business plan that is beyond 8 months from the point you're writing this is creative writing, right? So you have absolutely no clue about what you put in there is actually gonna become reality or not. And that is the same for the numbers you put in there. So if they ask you, say like, okay, what are your projected revenues in 3 to 5 years? I mean, everybody knows that everything beyond year 1 is just complete and utter speculation. But in the worst case, these kind of numbers are then used in order to value your IP, right? Or put a price tag on the IP that you want to get out. And I would be very wary of actually using those numbers and basing those numbers in the valuation of the IP. Instead, I would say try to do your own valuation based on first looking at the market that you're going to enter, and look at, let's say, similar companies in that space. Try to get their numbers in terms of in terms of past revenue, and basically try to kind of get an estimated guess about how much is that IP actually. How high is the share of that IP in the actual product for these companies, and also for your own company when you go into product development. So try to get as much information about companies operating in the same space. Yeah, trying to base that on past numbers and not on future projections. It's that's sort of the advice that I would give you, because everything that you predict about the future is probably not going to hold true, and everybody knows that taking a product to market takes twice as long and costs 3 times the money. So everything that you put in there beyond year 1 is I would say not really a good basis for value of putting a price tag and valuing your IP that you want to get out.
That's an awesome piece of advice. Thank you so much. I'd like to do something a little bit different now. So given that in the Clueless No More network, we have a few people going through the IP negotiations right now. Please show off emoji hands if you're going through the process. So I was expecting more. Okay. There you go. So I'd like to invite one of them that already shared his story with us internally to chime in as well. Lucas Green Delta, if you're there and if you don't mind being under the limelight, sorry for the ad hoc invite, but please, do you mind chiming in and share what you're witnessing in DLR right now?
Yeah, hi. No problem, Anna. I can say something. That's why I'm here, at least to learn something new. Yeah, what we are suffering a little bit, I also wrote it like in our Slack, is yeah, it's very intransparent for us. As I mean, I work for DLR since 13 years, so I know a lot of the processes which are ongoing and how all the machinery, like a large research institution, works. And I was really astonished about not the transparency, because I mean, we work for a long time there, so we just did at the initial stages, yeah, intend that we would have a fair treatment, I would say, because, and it was very saying not transparent. I want to have all the input, like you said, our business plan, this, the market size, and so on and so on and so on. And then they put and then we had a term sheet where we should put all our information in, and we asked them many times, like, okay, what's your process? How does it work? How is this ongoing? And there was never. They said, and that's what also we were like angry about. They said on this time, yeah, it works like this, and this does not work. And then the next meeting, they said something different, and it was really intransparent. And I mean, we started the process like in December last year, and we are just we just get the first draft, which was like where a lot of conditions were in. Also, other people might know here. Also, we have. We are not the only ones from DLR here, which is completely. Yeah, not payable like we do the spin-off, and we have to sign the contract. We got like insolvent just at the moment we're signing the contract, and we don't think this is I mean, they want to have those spin-offs, but on the other hand, they make like conditions initially. You can't. They are not acceptable. They are not feasible anymore. So this was really what we learned. I mean, what we did then a lot is like, okay, how to negotiate. I mean, we had negotiations in our work at DLR for third-party projects also, so it was not nothing completely new. But we initially thought they would be interested in more like a win-win, and we could achieve a win-win. But then this negotiation process was not familiar with us, as we thought, okay, we are in DLR still, we are not spin out, we are not a foreign company or something like this. And this was what we struggled a lot. Of course, and now we realized a lot of stuff. We realized what to do and what not to do, and have a fair, not to be getting angry, so to say. And also, it's very interesting also to shift to have the other position. And what's on the other hand for us was very interesting. We talked a lot to people around, to other spin-offs, and also saying our institute, and they completely agreed with our point of view. They said, oh, we want to have the spin-offs, we want to have the technology getting to the market. I mean, our university, our head of institute says, I mean, if you want to earn money with this afterwards, it's fine. We want to have some royalties, but we want to have you start on that. We want to have the best conditions for you now to start, because then afterwards we get some contracts and some payback. So talking to your head of institute, I don't know how it's in other research institutions, is very useful to have the agreement with your head of department, your head of institute, and so on. So they really support us, and they said, yeah, we want to make everything possible, and this was then a big step forward. Yeah, also like asking other founders. There is a podcast with Max Gulde from Constellar, also a space spin-off. I think I also wrote it in the Slack. We get in contact with him, and he was very helpful. He also always is asking, how is your license negotiation going? And he gave us such a list of tips and tricks. And he said, if you want to have some, we can discuss it, because he suffered the same from Fraunhofer. And so he said, okay, if you have any trouble, I can help you. This was also very helpful. So talking to other founders, that's also what we heard here. So that's a very, very short, yeah, we're just in it. We got the first contract. We made a proposal now from our point of view. We talked also to even our board of directors, because on the other hand, DLR wants to foster this spin-off topic. And we said, I mean, we don't care so much about what royalties we pay afterwards, but we want to start now, and please let us start. So this was our main point. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucas. And I'm really sorry to put you like so.
No, it's no problem. I mean, that's why I'm here. I like talking about
Can
this.
I refer to this?
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
I find it a bit troubling or bothering even that, I don't know, they do not facilitate it to you, that they really want to take everything from you from the very beginning on. Because in our negotiation, it was more like, even from the CFO level, it was like, if you win, we win. That's what we need. That's what everybody's looking for. So if there is like, we get the IP, yes, but we do not have to pay immediately. We pay like after there's a certain cap of revenue, and this is very important, because you do not want to give or split every euro you get into half and give out one half of it to your hosting institution. You need to ramp up in the very first phase. So when you reach a certain level of your product and of your maturity, then you should be basically able to and willing to pay back in a way, but not in the very beginning. This is draining a startup completely dry. And I think the most important thing that a startup has is money, nothing else. Like in the very beginning, you need money.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Patrick, the problem is, like, if we sign the contract now, I mean, we would be like insolvent initially, because
don't sign it.
Then
don't sign it.
Yeah, of course we can sign it, but this is I think this is not so fair at all. I mean, then because we can negotiate, but we negotiate from such a level where we can't even start. So that's
sure.
Yeah.
But for us, it was maybe helpful to tell them, well, you may have the IP, but I don't know if it's in your case the same, but for our IP, there was more behind it. There were a lot of, let's say, secrets, trade secrets, like how do you actually make it? And in the negotiation process, this was also sort of a leverage where we could tell them, look, you have the IP, you have to pay to keep the IP, the annual fees and so on. Then it was also not for free to even register the patent. We had several rounds with some lawyers and so on. And so we told them, well, if you want to have something back from this, then it's even beneficial for you to help us to use the patent. Otherwise, it is just another patent in your drawers. And I think it's the same in your host institution.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, the institution itself sees quite clearly that if we don't get successful, they will earn nothing. So our institute is very helpful, and our head of institute comes from industry. He says, okay, yeah, then start and get successful. I wish you all the best, and we'll make everything possible. And of course, also the thing what I forgot, Max Gulde from Khosla, he mentioned also they get like contracts more than several €100,000 for their institution. So at the current state. So, but nobody from the technology transfer office and the licensing office realize that at the beginning, and they always said, oh well, we will give you a lot of cash back because we want to use your laboratories, we want to use your facilities, and so on and so on. And nobody ever realized it, or not realized, but accepted that, or says that's not relevant for the license agreement. But I mean, if we can't start, we can't contract the institute bed, we can't get additional projects with them. So that's always what should be taken into account from the research institutions. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But also very important is probably to have a good personal feeling with the ones you have a negotiation with. If there is like a blocking barrier and everybody's sitting like this and they basically tell you, okay, now tell me what you have, it's probably boring to me, then it's maybe the wrong moment and the wrong setting. So having a good feeling and having like a sort of a nice atmosphere is very important. And here I can say in my host institution, it was really like always negotiating on the same level. Like they never looked down on us and, you know, like a sort of a, I don't know, parents kid situation. It was really like on the same level. And we really felt like appreciated for what we have done so far, what we have generated. And yeah, it was, we could finally make some win-win situation. I mean, I can tell you more about it in 5 or 10 years, but so far it feels like it.
I want to bring Aiko to the conversation as well, since he's also doing the negotiation at DLR as of this moment.
Right. Yeah, I'm the other guy from DLR. Thanks for calling me up. Hi, Lucas. Which is funny because we actually have the same TTO officer. So I know exactly the contract that he's got. I actually didn't really want to chime in that much on the conversation here. I was just wondering, Barbara, how was your experience working with, let's say, reticent TTO officers and so on, where basically many of the contracts are, for lack of better experience, just written extremely poorly?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, there is, well, the experience is that, and I mean, we've learned that through in the first kind of not even 1 year of the pilot that we are running, is like the degree of lack of transparency and the degree of kind of lack of just, let's say, what Patrick described as an eye-level, let's say eye-level atmosphere and like sort of partnership approach to this kind of mindset about saying that when you're successful, we are successful. I mean, that is, I would say, something that needs a lot of work, I think, in the current in the current atmosphere and in the current field. How to change that? I think it's basically one institution at a time. And I think what you have to work on is effectively making let's say, making it very hard for them to argue against it, to basically saying like, okay, look, they are doing it like that. All the founders coming out of these institutions are extremely happy. And they said that the negotiations are going really well. On the flip side, all the founders that are coming from your institutions, we hear only, we're only hearing very mixed things about. So what is your argument of keeping it the way that that you're doing it, right? So it's I have no really there is no magic bullet. I would say you have to really turn it one institution at a time. And I think you have to make it public. You really have to make it public. I would say there's, if negotiations are really stuck and are really hitting a dead end, you also always have to ask yourself, are you prepared to walk? Are you basically prepared to say, like, look, if you don't give me, let's say, the transparency that I need in order to understand, like, why are you coming to these terms and conditions that you're outlining in your term sheet, I'm not going to negotiate any further, and this is going to go nowhere, and we both lose. Do you want this? So of course that's sort of a tough piece of advice, but I would say if it's really that stuck at the end, and you really don't see any kind of way through, I would say, are you prepared to walk? And are you prepared?
Yeah, I actually pulled that card with the with one of the transfer officers that's assisting us in at the office there, and I actually told him, it's like, do you really want this startup to fail? And I sort of got him convinced on the SPRIND white paper there. So we'll see where that lands. Unfortunately, he's not responsible for our contract, so you know, baby steps. But
I'm with you. I'm with you. It's baby steps. It's really, as I'm saying, it's turning one. It's kind of turning one institution at a time. And I would say, you know, actually, I know the situation in Austria a little bit because with the help of the IP project and also with the help of Marianne Kulicke, who is also here in the room, we have done, you know, a lot of international research, and I think what we've seen from Austria is actually quite encouraging. I mean, how they are reworking their processes there in order to make it more equitable, in order to create more of an atmosphere of partnership and eye-level conversation, I think is quite encouraging, at least from some of the institutions that we see there. And I do think we just have to hold them up and just saying, like, look at how they are rejigging their understanding about how these negotiations go, and really put them on a, you know, give them the publicity, put them forward and saying there is a different way of doing this.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. So there's a couple of terms in the contract that we're trying to negotiate out now, and we have a couple of discussions coming up. Should we be successful in doing that and then get like an okay-ish license agreement, which we could sign and would also be equitable, would it still make sense to basically sign that, start the company, and still try to push for instance, an IP4 shares model or something like that as a renegotiation? Or is that a poor tactic? Also to the panel.
I would look to the investors right now, because at the moment, I mean, the moment you sign obviously a poor agreement, the risk is always that in case you need to raise further finance, they will look at the agreement and basically say, this is uninvestable for me. So I don't know, from the investment side here.
Let me pull in Andreas on this.
All right, I just need to give myself the pin now. I mean, I think it really depends on the contract that you kind of have as a baseline, and I think like this is probably kind of becoming easier as you progress with the company and kind of can show the tech transfer office there's actual value in the company, because I think for them in the beginning, I feel like the situation oftentimes is, oh yeah, we can't value the success of the company, so we kind of have to get value out as soon as possible, and kind of as you can show them, hey, we've been able to kind of get investors along, they've been valuing our company at X, and kind of this is the route or kind of the trajectory that we're working with. Then I think this kind of becomes a bargaining chip again, and you can negotiate around this. But I think I like, from my limited experience, I probably would only touch a decent-ish agreement if you are fine with kind of changing the status quo. I think if you can live with the status quo, then oftentimes it's probably best to not change it, because I think then the TTO or whoever you're negotiating with also doesn't have a good feeling for what share would be appropriate, and then they want to kind of start throwing around like, oh yeah, 15% of a company would be great, and then us investors are like, hey, this is like a real problem, because in a couple of rounds you founders don't have any equity left for yourselves, and kind of the incentivization becomes questionable.
But I mean, in the best case, sorry, Georg, before you go. But in the best case, you may also find that, you know, you develop new IP in the company, and that the future success of your company may not actually depend on the original IP that you licensed from the university. And then, you know, that's the best possible situation that you can have. So also look on that side of things, right? So, I mean, maybe you need some of the IP to get going, and maybe I mean, of course, it's never advisable to sign a contract that you aren't really comfortable with, but also, I mean, you know, things can go in very unexpected directions on that front.
Yeah, go ahead, Georg, chime in.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to point out one thing concerning the shares for IP moment, right? So I think all of our investors got a bit shivers on their spine when thinking of a really public institution in the cap table. And that is because if the shares for IP are the last thing that you can put on the negotiation table, then you might have in later rounds also not that fluent discussions with that university in your cap table, but you have to talk to them in those moments then, right? So it's strategically not a thing I would personally avoid, but maybe someone has a different opinion on that, but I don't feel well with that. If I can avoid it, I could take another strategy for that.
And it's a very good point. We are actually planning a whole event about Clueless about cap tables, because we have seen a lot of spinouts having absolutely disgusting and awful cap tables, if you don't mind me saying. There is also one question here that says, is it reasonable for a university to take 20% equity in a startup? Who wants to take that one? Go ahead.
I say, no, please not. That's all I can say about this.
Yeah, it's actually insane. 20% is insane.
Sorry, Patrick, just go.
I just wanted to add what you just said before. Having them at all in the cap table is never a good thing. Investors would always look at the institute and they're like, okay, so they have a share. They even have like an opinion on it. They can even negotiate with us. I don't want a public institution to negotiate with me. So it's actually like a downside of having them inside. So we actually have the institution in our, they got shares from us, but they are virtual shares. So whenever I don't know, I would pay money to myself, I would give them some part of the money. So investors never see them having being in the pool in a way.
Yeah,
that's a possibility.
Good one. So I actually had some questions about software, but in spinning out software. But Georg, since we already dived into questions, I'm just gonna continue down that road. So looking at the Menti, the first question here is, so is obtaining an IP the first step for spin-offs? At what point should this be done? Patrick, would you mind?
Sorry, I think I didn't quite get it. If you maybe rephrase it.
I think that the question, so the person who asked the question meant it more in the direction of, is this the first step that I should take if I want to start a spin-off? Security.
To have a cap on the money. Oh, sorry, I'm really I don't know right now what to say about it.
May I answer maybe?
Yeah, go ahead.
From my point of view, it's not the first thing that you do, because this is now again entrepreneurship, right? Mm-hmm. So from my experience at the university, you always have more solutions than problems, right? So research institutions create a lot of knowledge and publish it normally or put it in patents, but they don't go to, let's say, really users and end customers. And I would not create or spin out a company of a university without understanding the real problems of the domain I'm going into well. This is much more serious than having the right technology from my point of view. You have to go in there, understand the problem, and then match the technology that you have, and then decide what technology to get it out of the university. If you do it the other way around, you might end up with a thing that no one wants. So, because the most serious task of an entrepreneur in the beginning is validation, and that for months and years, right? Validation is the most important thing You can do validation with starting with service, with landing pages, with prototypes, with with trade fairs that you go to, with just some mocks, whatever you do, but the technology is not the right thing to start with. It's always the problem that you target.
So doing a good research on product market fit, building a plan of what exactly you want to spin out, what technology and what knowledge you want to spin out, is then the order of things, and then build up your spin out strategy for the IP negotiations. Thank you. The next question we had is, how early will investors be willing to put in the money? What are the pros and cons of selling early? So, I mean, both of you have like different strategies and approaches to this, but Georg went in very early with investors, if I'm not mistaken. Kindish.
Yes, kindish, because as I said, we had already a company in parallel to do our chair work. And basically, we talked to a lot of potential end users about what we are creating in parallel. And basically, it took 2 years before we really talked to our first investor, Atlantic Labs, right? So yeah, so it was not that immediate.
Right, and Patrick, what is your strategy here? You just spun out, so
exactly. So for us, it's basically public money in the first place, having some grants, also going for some EU grants maybe, which help you out a lot in the initial phase, because you have a burn rate. It's maybe not that high yet because you do not have too many employees, you do not have too many people that you need to pay for. Your product is maybe not at the level yet where it's actually worth a lot. So you want to raise, let's say, the value of your product, and then when it's at a certain level, then you probably should talk and should find the proper investor, so you do not give away shares for too little money. But I have to say that, of course, we already started talking to investors, and I think that this is the right strategy. Georg, you're maybe a bit in a more advanced, more mature level here, but I think talking to investors in a very early stage when you do not need the money yet, is a good idea. Like when it's very late, when you say like, oh damn, 2 months, 3 months, we completely we're running dry with your back to the wall, then you just have to negotiate the deal, sign it immediately, and just be happy that you got any money, otherwise you die. And I think that's the wrong moment. Yeah. So talking with them, be honest, tell them, well, I don't need money now. Maybe we talk in 1 year. This is our technology, and keep them posted. Find them on LinkedIn, talk with them, find them on events, see where they are, and also have a good feeling with investors. I think that's quite important.
On our previous event.
That's not what I meant, of course. Yeah, talking to other people and investors is always a good thing. I just said what I meant is don't go out when you have the technology. Go out when you have the problem that you want to solve. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would
exactly.
say, try to get as much grant funding as you can get in the initial phases, because it's non-dilutive funding. And only go to investors when you actually need them in order to put your company on a certain growth trajectory. But start to talk to them early. I mean, of course you have to. I mean, it's not as if fundraising is a very long and arduous process, and you will have to talk to a lot of people in this initial phase of also getting yourself out there, getting yourself known, getting your company on their radar, getting your technology on their radar, and so that just takes time. So when you then actually are ready to actually start your first fundraising round, they already know you. I mean, that's the real value in those conversations. And yes, they take time, but you have to do it in parallel for sure.
And during our last event, which was exactly Clueless about how to structure the first round, we tackled these points on how to build a relationship with investors and how early you should start. Andy, do you want to chime in with any VC perspective here?
Now I have to again find how I pin myself. I think in general, I agree. Like it's not too early to talk to investors ever. Basically, like I think with some ideas, it might even be better to talk with investors really early when it's still just kind of ideas and nothing. An investor could ask for nothing to prove it, but I think those we leave to decide. But I think in general, just building that relationship makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, every conversation, even if it's just a casual conversation and like neither side is coming into it as this has some fundraising context. I mean, there's always some fundraising context. Like we keep thinking about like, hey, what do I think? If I come away from a conversation with someone and I'm like, hey, this is could be a really cool founder, or they're working on something really exciting, then obviously I'm kind of putting this as a note for my next interaction with someone. So I think like you still kind of have to kind of show up and kind of be yourself, but kind of try to be a good version of yourself. But I mean, this is kind of, I think, general advice. So I think like if you bring yourself to the table and or to the conversation and just show why you're excited about this and why this is like why you're taking that decision to spend basically the next years of your life building this, then I think this is kind of should be convincing also for VC to think about like how could I make money with this.
And where can I chime in to help? Because this is also like one huge part of what we try to do. So moving on with the questions, we don't have many left, or do we? So there is also like questions, how much does it cost to get an IP? I think this is different for different institutions, but Barbara, what's your impression on this?
Well, the question is always like, okay, so that's the question when you're starting to obviously put a price tag on things. And I mean, I would say in the very enlightened cases, you should get a kind of a figure on how much did actually go into the whole IPR process, right? So for example, how much did it cost to file the patent? How much did the university or the research institution had to upfront in terms of patent attorney costs, et cetera, and I think it's if they are transparent about that and saying like, okay, this is how much it costs us, this is how much it costs us to also uphold the patent and so on, I would say that's a very reasonable amount to actually somehow get back, because these are not costs that they necessarily have in their budgets, right? So this is something where I say, yeah, okay, it's fair that they recuperate this kind of expenditure. Beyond that, if they then start doing funny things of saying, oh, this is how much research money went into this, and this is how much of the resources of the university went into this, or of the research institutions, that's when it gets a bit hairy, because that's when, the numbers can very easily spiral out of control. And I would say, beware of any kind of inflated numbers. Always ask very reasonably and saying like, what is your rationale behind coming up with those numbers? And then, each of those numbers then can be negotiated upon, and saying, is this actually really reasonable to put this into the overall amount or not? It's all about transparency. If they refuse to tell you like this is how much it's worth, and then they tell you and they're not willing to give you any kind of information about how they came up with that number, kind of a bad start, I would say. But if they're amenable and if they really want to support you, they will give you a rundown of the costs and say like, okay, this is how much it costs us, and this is our starting point for the negotiation. And I think that's a good start.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, people should be wary of, this is a standard practice, or everything that we put on this table now is standard, and you should not move away from it because everything is negotiable. Last question for tonight. By the way, for any other questions that popped out and so on, you can send them directly to me at anna@firstmomentum.vc. And then we can have an asynchronous AMA over the next week or so. So the last question is, can you create a successful spin-off without a team? What stage is it essential to bring on someone with business experience? This is an interesting one.
Maybe if I can refer to this.
That would be very nice.
So we basically spun out with a team of 4, 3 of the technology side, let's say, and the fourth one is from the biz side. But we basically spin out with this, but we have let's say it's a very difficult decision that we took, that the business person is not evolved in the daily business yet, because in the very initial phase of a deep tech spinout, it's very important that you have the creators in a way to pitch, to tell everyone what you have, what you do, what the technology can actually do, and what it's capable of. And you bring your enthusiasm, and getting a biz person to your team, this person can never sell it as good as you can. So it's basically the front runners need to be you, the technology guys, and maybe at the later stage, maybe in 1 year or 2 years, it's important to have an experienced biz person really full-time employed in your company. But until then, probably you need to run it a bit more lean. Do not spend too much money on a biz person. Have them as an advisor at an early stage, but do not have them at full time. I think it's in our calculation, it was way too early to have a biz person already there.
That's an interesting one. I would have, so if I can chime in, I know that I'm not supposed to share my opinions here, but like still, we're all family. The thing is that I would argue actually the opposite. I think that a biz person would have a thinking process that is necessarily different on how to commercialize research than a research founder might have. And then therefore it might be essential to give them the same kind of executive power. So this would have been kind of my thinking, but glad to disagree on this.
But really, like actually, it was basically the idea of this biz person that they could be more like an advisory person and really ramp everything up, but not as a full-time employee or full-time, working on this, but giving more or less the advices.
Yeah. All right.
But having them on board is very important. Yes, the point of view you get from a biz person is really important. And some advisory person could be even a future investor. It could be someone from another department at your institute. It could be some other person who is not even involved in your business, but helps you maybe on some advices.
Yeah, that also makes sense. With that, any last words, and then we disperse? All right, then I'll be happy to wrap it up here. I would like to thank to the panel so much for allocating their time and sharing their valuable insights into this topic that is never ending. So with this in mind, we're already planning an actual event that will span out more than 1.5 hours, as this topic deserves, definitely. So happy to share more details about it as they come. In the meantime, have a good evening and enjoy your summer.
Thank you, Anna, for organizing. And maybe by that time we organize that event, we already have a first draft of our Swiss pocket knife for IP transfer.
Yay.
We would love to have your input on that. We would love to have your input on that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us.
everyone.
Bye.
Till
you,
next
everyone.
time.